Last week, the Music and Mavens Concert and Lecture series at the Rady JCC launched their 27th season of outstanding programming. Coming up this Tuesday, January 14th at 2 p.m. at the Rady JCC's Bernie Theatre, the Music and Mavens Concert and Lecture series will take a deep dive into the wonderful world of woodwinds and the overachieving minds of woodwind doublers, those who are masters and more than one of the members of the woodwind family. For this upcoming concert, audiences will be treated to no less than 12 different woodwinds, everything from saxophone to bassoon to clarinet to flute, as a Quartet of Quartets performs music ranging from classical to jazz to Latin American music. Led by legendary Winnipeg Doubler Julie Husband, this concert will highlight the vast possibilities of the woodwind family while entertaining and informing audiences. And joining me here in the Classic 107 studio to talk about Tuesday's concert called A Quartet of Quartets, I am joined by the legend herself, my dear friend, Julie Husband. Hey, Julie, great to have you here.
Great to be here with you, Chris, as always.
Okay, so I want to start out by asking about you. I believe you started your music degree at Brandon as a flute player. What made you want to become a doubler, and why did you? What made you want to go down that path?
Well, I think I came by it kind of accidentally, and I must, rewind to first when I first started in band in Kenora, Ontario, grade 9. They supplied the instruments, and when I went to choose one, I asked the band director, George Demaduke, who is my mentor, and I wouldn't be here today talking to you about music if it wasn't for him. And I said, Mr. Demaduke, I want to play the bassoon. I don't know where I heard that. I think from Fantasia and the Sorcerer's Apprentice. And he said, well, we supply instruments here, and the only instrument left for you is the flute. So I said, okay, I'll play the flute. So I hyperventilated for like 6 months and thought, what am I doing? Anyways, a grade 12 student helped me out. And so I continued all the way through high school on flute, auditioned to go to Brandon University, was accepted there. And I went there and said, are there any bassoons? I want to play bassoons. And they went, well, they're all signed out. There's no bassoons. And so my second year, I talked to Jim Mendenhall, who is the bassoon instructor, and said, please, can you find me a bassoon? Which he did. So I studied bassoon there and ended up having that as my minor. And I was in the education stream, so you had to take woodwind techniques, brass techniques, percussion, string. And of course, I learned how to play saxophone and clarinet and oboe. And I took an extra oboe portion because I was playing bassoon already. And then I ended up teaching up in Thompson after I graduated. And I taught grade 8, 9, and then there was a high school there as well. And I ended up playing bassoon in the senior band, and then they needed a bari sax player in their jazz band. Now, I'd never played, saxophone other than woodwind technique, so I thought, I can do this, and just fell in love, first of all, with big band music, and secondly, with the bari sax. I just thought it was the greatest thing, sort of big like the bassoon, kind of low.
Yep.
And so I did that for 1 year there. Then I moved to Winnipeg to teach at Golden Gate, and ran into my good friend Shane Nestruck, who is also teaching in the school division. And he found out, I guess I played bari, and said, I need a bari player in my saxophone quartet. I said, I'm in. So I played in his group Saxology for years and years. And then I auditioned to play in Ron Paley's university band, got into that, which was wonderful. He's another mentor of mine. And then I got to play in his big band, which was very exciting. And then I guess, no one wants to carry around that bari sax except me and a few other people. So I ended up playing in Kerry Cooner's big band, and I just loved the bari sax and loved playing in the saxophone quartet. And then I had the wonderful, wonderful opportunity back in 1985, 40 years ago. Yikes. I had the opportunity, as I said, to play my very first show at Rainbow Stage. And I know you were going to ask me about that in some of your questions. And there was a clarinet part in there. So I was like, better practice that clarinet. So I started really practicing all these instruments. And just from that very first musical, which was Mame, I absolutely fell in love with musicals and thought, this is what I want to do. And a lot of the musicals that I was hired for had multiple instruments in it. So you would go from piccolo to flute, and then you'd grab a clarinet, put that down, grab saxophone, and so forth. So I went to Brandon University as a flute player, and my path certainly did change.
Yeah, just switch around. One of the things I always think about with woodwind doublers is flexibility. I often wonder how woodwind players, you can go from flute to bassoon and not only make the necessary embouchure changes, but also the hand position changes. How do you move between, how do you make those switches? And not only do you have to play the instrument, you've got to be able to play it in tune in the show.
This is true. I mean, maybe it's magic, I don't know. But I have spent, since 1985, 40 years of learning how to do that. So the first thing is to have really good instruments. And I did study with Vince Ellen from the symphony, Connie Gitlin from the symphony, Shane, studied with my friend Janice Finley, who's also another mentor. Like flute, the fingering system, flute and saxophone is similar. There are some obvious differences that can throw you off if you're not, paying attention. Now, flute to bassoon is very different. Yeah. I mean, the flute's in the treble clef, the bassoon's in the bass clef. The fingering system is totally different.
Right.
The Theobald Boehm was the sort of inventor of the modern flute, and they used his Boehm system of key work for parts of the clarinet and the saxophone, obviously. And so I know sometimes if I'm playing bassoon, which is off to the side, my bari sax is off to the side, so is the tenor. I sometimes mix up the fingerings. Now, flute, because it's totally different up top and that, I usually don't mess up fingerings with that. But it is different, and I've spent a lot of time, like I'll practice flute, and then I'll go to bassoon, then I'll go back to flute, then I'll go to clarinet, then I'll kind of go around, just getting so that you know how to rechange
those switches,
your embouchure. And I think, and I did study that, the tone, if you have a beautiful tone, the tuning can sort of come. There's things like playing outside, it's cold. Yeah. The instruments go flat, sharp, and then, they sit there for 25 minutes. Sometimes like you're playing 3 other instruments and you pick this up and it's,
the
feels
instrument's
like
cooled
it's
off.
Frozen or something.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's not playing in tune so much. Okay, so on Tuesday, you've got this concert coming up. How did it come about? Did Carla approach you or did you approach Carla?
Well, it's kind of a new group, if I may sort of talk about how we came up with the idea. Originally started as a sax quartet. I love playing sax quartet music. And then it went, people in here can play multiple instruments. Why don't we call it Quartet of Quartets and do flute quartets and saxophone and sort of double reed. There's some double reeds that we're doing as well. It was kind of thought about before COVID, then COVID hit, and we know what happened there with ideas and so forth. And then I went, no, I want to do this. So I kind of formed this group of people who I thought were good jazz players, can play classical, can play multiple instruments. And we did 3 Manitoba Band Association band camps. So that was our first, sort of performance of this group. And then I thought music and Mavens would be perfect. So I did contact Carla and, bounce this idea off her. And she thought it was kind of unique that you can see 12. And and there would be more if I actually owned more instruments.
So can you talk about who's in the quartet and how you wrangled them all together, like for rehearsals?
With a rope, No, actually, the members are awesome musicians who I've actually, the people I can name them for you are Lauren Tedorenko, Niall Cade, and Neil Watson. And I met Niall and Lauren at Vincent Massey when they were attending high school there, not that long ago. And Lauren was studying bassoon. She was a sax player. And I kind of went, I could see the potential way back then. And then Niall also was playing bass clarinet in a clinic I did and went, whoa. He's also a good player. So I've known them for a long time. Neil and I played in the U of M concert band, and then all of us have played with the Winnipeg Jazz Orchestra, and we've done, different things together. And I thought that was a good fit. Lauren plays some bassoon and a little bit of oboe, and so we kind of are switching around. And Neil and Niall, that's interesting, are really good jazz players. So is Lauren. But I kind of wanted, we all seem to click together and when we play, and I thought these would, this would be a good group. So I kind of wrangled them with this idea, and they were in right from the start. So.
Can you talk about some of the different instruments that each of the musicians is going to be performing on Tuesday? Like, what can people expect to see?
Well, Lauren is playing flute, bass clarinet, tenor sax, oboe, and bassoon. Niall is playing clarinet, flute, alto flute, and alto sax. Neil is playing soprano, flute, bass flute, and clarinet. And I'm playing piccolo, flute, clarinet, bassoon, and bari sax.
So it's a wide variety of instruments that people will be able to see.
It is, yes.
And can you talk about some of the music that you're going to be playing?
Well, we kind of wanted to pick a variety of pieces that would highlight like the different instruments. So when I'm playing piccolo, we're doing Baby Elephant Walk. And I figured that would be a fun one to do. And the ballet of the chicks in their shells. So the piccolo really fits in there. And then the Handel water music is just for four flutes to give you that idea. And just fun pieces. And I have to admit that a lot of them are my favorites. So and the members do have input. But there's sort of just pieces that I thought this would be perfect. Plus, over the years, I have collected a lot of quartets, like flute and so forth and so forth. So those fit there. And then clarinet, we've, got a classical piece. I wanted to kind of do stuff with classical music, some, jazz, some modern pop. We've got a Bizet piece, and there's something from Carmen Bizet, and just a variety of things to give people an idea of how these instruments, four of them, can sound. And then there's one thing where we're playing flute, piccolo, flute, alto flute, bass flute, to give you an idea. We're doing some swing and shepherd blues, and Neil's rocking out on the bass flute, and just a variety of things. And then we've got one piece where it's flute, bassoon, oboe, and bass flute, and that's the Flower Duet from Loch May. And it was one of my favorites, so let's put that in there. And I had a nice arrangement of that. And then, like, the saxophone stuff is there's so much stuff with that, too. So we've got, like, some ragtime stuff. We've got St. Louis blues. We've got this Wapango piece that is dear to my heart. And
Paquito D'Rivera.
Paquito, when I had the wonderful opportunity to play in Kerry Cluner's big band, and we did a CD back in 1990. So that's a while ago. And he was the guest artist. And this piece came, like he wanted to do Wapango. So it starts with a sax quartet and then breaks into the whole big band. And it was a great piece. And he was the most wonderful person. And he actually gave me the copies for the sax quartet that I could use it. And so Wapango is a great piece. And then we've got Saber Dance. We're doing some classical music and sort of a whole variety of things to give people an idea of music, on different instruments.
Are the musicians going to be chatting up the instruments and talking about how they differ from one to the other and what the range possibilities?
We might do that a bit. It might be just me, and then I might get somebody to do, so that they have an opportunity. It's not just me up there talking all the time. But as part of, like they like when you give an educational portion to the concert. So we can certainly talk about, how the instruments work and their roles in certain things and how we've kind of changed, with the music we picked. We can, the saxophone's always associated with jazz, yet it sounds great as a classical group.
Yeah, sure does.
Flute can, is always associated sometimes more with classical music, but we're ramping it up. And we do have some, like, audience participation on some pieces. Can't give it away as a surprise, but there's a couple things where, if audience want to come up and play. And my whole thing, and I think the other members of the group as well, our mindset is that music doesn't have to always be serious. It can be fun. You can play fun pieces and show people that music is fun in any genre,
So I'm going to wrap things up. That sounds like something that you want people to take away from the concert. Is there anything else that you're hoping people walk away with?
I hope they just walk away thinking, wow, that was fun. And what a great way to be entertained by so many different instruments. And not every day do you get to see something like a piccolo and an alto flute and a bass flute and a bassoon, oboe all combined together, and like all the saxophones and that kind of thing. So, just that joy of music and the information, about some people don't know that, the saxophone was invented much later and combined aspects of the flute fingering and the clarinet mouthpiece and so forth. And so hopefully they'll come away just feeling good about music. That's what I always like to portray whenever I play anywhere, is I'm having fun and it's such a joy, and hopefully people will, I remember that piece from somewhere or whatever. That's my hope.
That's going to be great.
Yeah.
Julie, this has been so fun to have you here in studio. All the best on Tuesday. I'm sure it's going to be all kinds of really goodness. Thanks so much for taking the time to stop by and talk to me today. It's been wonderful.
My pleasure, Chris. Thank you so much.
For our Classic 107 listeners, the Quartet of Quartets concert, as presented by the Music and Mavens Concert and Lecture Series, happens this Tuesday, January the 14th at 2 p.m. at the Rady JCC's Bernie Theatre. For more details, visit radyjcc.com or go to classic107.com. I've embedded a direct link to the show page in the article that you can find that is up there now. Julie, thanks again.
My pleasure.